Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. Football season begins in just a couple of weeks. Don't sit in old chairs. Get down to Games and Things and get yourself some home theater seats. 1 for you, 2, 4, whatever you need. Games and Things has the best selection of home theater seats in all of East Tennessee. Spectacular stuff. I've gotten a couple there that I have loved, and they are as good today as they were when I first bought them probably 5 years ago. Games and Things. You can also visit ourgameroom.com to see more of their selection, but it's better if you can go in there and test them out with your own rumps. Games and Things, because life should be fun. All right. Just very quickly here, we talked about the realignment contraction in the last one. There are still rumors. The ACC has been looking at Stanford, Cal, and SMU. They need to get 12 of 15 schools to agree to do it. So far, they haven't come close. Well, they've come close, but they haven't gotten Clemson and Florida State, who don't want it to expand because that would trap them. North Carolina and NC State have said no as well to the expansion. Notre Dame, who's always a rival with Stanford, wants them in there. You had 12 of 15 that said yes, but you needed one more to say yes to it. Or they had 11 of 15 that said yes. They need to get 12. Bottom line is, does anybody think this is going to change? Stanford's got Condoleezza Rice campaigning. SMU has George W. Bush campaigning. Stanford has said, you don't have to pay us. We'll come in and do it for free. SMU has said the same thing. You don't have to pay us the first 5 years or whatever. Does anybody think that's going to change and get them the votes in the ACC? Anybody?
No, because I think those schools want to leave the ACC, and they don't want to strengthen the ACC's position, even possibly strengthen their position.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you have so many people that's Florida State is talking about it like they're in prison.
Yeah,
I think people talk about Clemson and Florida State. Don't sleep on North Carolina. North Carolina, I think, is a much more attractive property for the SEC than Clemson or Florida State is.
Agreed.
I think people forget.
And the Big Ten.
Yes, and people forget the SEC. Their conference networks are headquartered in a state in which they do not have a team. Just a thought.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think so either. I think it's for the same reason. Too many divided interests, everyone looking out for themselves. No one's going to worry about strengthening the ACC right now because they've got their own exit plans in mind.
I would say no as well. My only hesitation is that the idea sounds absurd.
Yeah.
So because it doesn't make any sense, I leave open the possibility.
Right. The possibility has to. I mean, you never say never in any of this stuff. The idea of Southern Cal and UCLA moving to the Big Ten, to me, that was the one that was just the most insane, more than anything else we've seen. And it took a year before Oregon and Washington joined them. So
it'll be interesting to see how far the money goes with Cal and Stanford and SMU. How far can they push it? If you keep saying no and you keep saying no, and SMU says, what about if we take no money for 7 years?
Yeah.
And what about, listen, Stanford's got pretty serious endowment. SMU, they got a lot of oil money. SMU doesn't have a ton of fans, but they got a bunch of really rich fans that are willing to bankroll this.
Yeah,
they've been determined to get back to whatever the adults table of college football looks like for 30 years since they got booted from the Southwest Conference when
they have to sit there and they've sat there and watched TCU.
That doesn't
elevate,
help.
And so it's
play for a national title,
yeah. So it's
and then turn back and say we're not playing you anymore. So SMU's trying to get there,
and take their coach.
Yes, take their coach. All of the above.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's the kind of stuff that led to the Southwest Conference demise. So maybe it's better to not get them up. Let me ask you this one. A lot of people this week have been saying, and I agree with it. Sounds great. Split college football off. Let college football be its own thing, and let all the other sports go back to being regional conferences. Sounds terrific. How the hell do you do it? Because now all of a sudden all those people who just joined new conferences are going to have to break those contracts and pull out and go back to the old conference. I just don't see how it sounds great in theory, but with all these leagues having different contracts that last for different dates, I don't see how it happens.
There are legality problems, and I think the problem too is they're basically just no one's worried about the big picture and making any of these decisions. They're worried about what's best for their bottom line. So no one's thinking about, hey, let's get together and figure out what makes sense for all of us, all 40 or 50 programs. No, it's everyone's looking out for themselves, and so the finished product is going to be very fragmented and not so holistic like we're thinking about.
That's my biggest concern as well, is what Ryan's saying. College football's tribal. So how in the world is the Big Ten going to listen to Greg Sankey? Is the SEC going to dissolve itself to go into a super conference because that's what the Big Ten wants right now? There's no way in the world the biases that we have currently in college athletics allow this at least in the short term, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the whole debate over paying players. It's like the worms kind of turn there, but it's like the old adage that if a man's salary depends on him not understanding something, it's very hard to get him to understand something. And a lot of administrators are going to say like, "Oh, no, I don't think this. I don't think so," even though it's pretty plainly clear that this is like something where you need to go. But the hurdles to getting there are so like gigantic, and the toothpaste is so far out of the tube that getting to a place where things are a little bit more common sense. It just, I lose count when you start adding up the hurdles to getting there, even though this is where it needs to go.
Vol fans just need to be happy that you're in you happen to grow up in one of the two leagues that looks like they're not going to be splintering. So that's a positive. Josh, I'll let you finish this thing up. Any last thoughts on?
Yeah, I'm holding out hope that at some point, once tectonic plates appear close to finishing their move in the world of football, and maybe this can apply to football, men's basketball, a couple other sports, that the Olympic sports, something allows them to go back to a more normal place than where things are headed for them now. Once the money is where it's going to be, and you can actually find some financial advantages to go back in terms of travel costs, all that stuff, that perhaps cooler heads will prevail and say, hey, for these other sports, let's go back to a better place. Football's where it is.
Well, if everything right now is about money, and it appears to be, and it's just getting more and more about the money, my fear would be that at some point one school is going to say, why do we need the Olympic sports? There's no money in the Olympics. Just dump it. Just dump it all together. Yes, it's quality of campus life, yada, yada, yada. Cash. If I'm willing to take my league in my school in L.A. to go play in New Jersey against Rutgers, I'm pretty calculating enough to say we really don't need gymnastics. I mean, that would be on the table at some point. We don't have time for everybody to chime in, so that's my final answer. And you have to live with it. All right, when we come back, how can you bet against us and bet against the Cavaliers line? We have a way this year. You can play along, and you get a pretty cool prize out of it if you're the victor in our tournament. So come on back. We'll explain how that's going to work next on the Sports Source.